Newlywed, nearly a widow and a heartless mother-in-law. I was 24 when I married the love of my life. We'd only been together for 2 years, but from the moment I met him I knew he was different. Grounded, gentle, brave. His name was Lucas, and he was a merchant marine, the kind of man who had seen the world and still chose to love a small-town girl like me. We got married in a quiet ceremony by the coast, just a few close friends and family members present. My dress was simple, the food homemade, but the joy I felt was overwhelming. I was sure I'd entered a dream that day, but the dream would crack sooner than I ever expected. Lucas left just 6 days after our wedding. He was assigned to an oil tanker heading north from Texas to New York. I knew what I was getting into when I married him: long absences, uncertain waters, sometimes weeks with no contact. Still, when you're newlywed, your heart isn't prepared for the silence. It echoes louder than you think. It was a Thursday night. I remember the details with painful clarity. I was sitting on our old plaid sofa, grading 5th grade spelling. Tests still in my work clothes, dinner forgotten and cold on the table. The local news was playing in the background, more noise than anything. Then suddenly the newscaster's voice sharpened. Breaking news tonight: an unidentified oil tanker is reportedly in distress, on fire, and in danger of sinking off the coast of the Carolinas. Details are limited, and authorities are not releasing the ship's name at this time. My heart stopped. Off the coast of the Carolinas. That matched Lucas's route exactly. At first, I sat frozen. The red banner at the bottom of the screen pulsed like a heartbeat. My mind tried to dismiss the fear. There are hundreds of ships out there. It could be any of them. But the coincidence was too much. I dropped the papers and grabbed the phone. I called Lucas's company. The woman who answered was polite but distant, almost robotic. "I'm sorry, ma'am. We have to follow standard procedure. We are not confirming any ship identities until families are properly notified." I hung up, my hands trembling. I called Sandra. Her husband, Mike, was also on Lucas's crew. She hadn't heard anything either. Her voice shook too. "Do you think it's them?" she whispered. I didn't answer. We both knew it could be, and then the phone rang again. For one brief, breathless second, I hoped it would be Lucas, or maybe someone from the company with news, good or bad. I just needed to know. But the caller ID blinked coldly. It was her, my mother-in-law. Let's pause for a moment here because context matters. I met her a few months into dating Lucas. She was icy. Never rude exactly, but distant in a way that made you feel like you were trying to hug a statue. She didn't say much when we got engaged. A forced smile, a quiet congratulations. And on our wedding day, she wore black. Black. Now I've heard of difficult mothers-in-law. But she was in a category of her own. Polite when others were watching, but cutting when no one else was around. Lucas told me she'd always been that way, reserved, stoic, critical. "She means well," he'd say. "She just doesn't know how to show love." But that night, the night I thought I might become a widow, she showed something all right. "Have you heard the news?" she asked, her voice flat, almost bored. "Yes," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I'm trying to find out if it's his ship. His company won't give me any information. I've been calling around, but nothing yet." I was on the verge of tears, my voice cracking under the weight of fear. All I wanted, all I needed was a shred of compassion, a kind word, something to make me feel less alone in that moment of terror. But instead, in a tone so cold and clinical it could have been read from a spreadsheet, she replied, "Well, if something happens, who's going to pay for the funeral now that you're married?" I froze. No, gasp. No, oh my God. No, are you okay? Just money. Money. At a moment when I thought her son could be dead at sea, there was a silence. Not dramatic, just empty, a vacuum. My brain tried to process what she had just said, the question, the detachment, the utter absence of humanity. And then without a word, I hung up the phone. I didn't scream. Not yet. But I stared at the wall for several minutes before the tears started. I cursed louder than I ever had in my life. I punched the pillow on our sofa. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality. I had already been terrified of losing the man I loved. But now that terror was joined by something else. Rage. The hours that followed were a blur. I called the company again. No update. I sat in front of the TV, eyes glued to the ticker tape at the bottom of the screen. Still, no identification, Every time a reporter said tanker or fire, I flinched. I kept calling Sandra. She hadn't heard anything either. We sat on the phone breathing together, saying nothing. Then somewhere around 2 a.m., she called me back. "They just confirmed the ship name," she said, breathless. "It's not theirs. It's a different crew. They're fine. Mike just texted." I fell to the floor sobbing. Lucas was okay. But something in me had shifted forever. The fear was gone, but the anger had taken root. That's when I decided to let her feel what I felt. I didn't call her back. Let me be clear. This wasn't a childish move. It wasn't about being vindictive. It was about giving her a taste of the emptiness I had felt when she casually asked me with zero emotion who would pay for his funeral. So I let her wonder. She knew the ship matched Lucas's route. She knew the reports. And I didn't tell her he was safe. I knew what I was doing. And yes, it was petty, but it was also the clearest message I could send. You don't get access to my heart anymore. The next day, the news confirmed it publicly. The ship that burned was not the one Lucas was on. Families were being notified. Survivors rescued. Lives saved. I imagine she found out watching the same news broadcast as the rest of the country. She didn't call me. I didn't call her. When Lucas returned home 2 weeks later, I didn't tell him right away. Not because I was hiding it, but because I wanted to look into his eyes. When I did, I needed him to understand. When I finally told him what she said, he sat in silence, his jaw clenched. I had never seen him like that. "She what?" he asked quietly. I repeated it, word for word. His eyes darkened. And then in a low, even tone, he said, "She's never loved me the way she should. But now she's lost her last chance." From that day forward, everything changed. I wasn't rude to her. I didn't yell, didn't confront, didn't write a dramatic letter. No, I was civil, polite, cordial even. But distant, cold in the way she had always been to me. She was no longer a part of my heart. Just a name I occasionally heard when Lucas answered his phone with a sigh. I saw her at family holidays. I smiled for the pictures I handed her dishes at dinner. But I never gave her warmth again. She became a stranger. And somehow our lives became better. Lucas and I moved to a new city, built a home. Had 2 daughters, and every time I looked at them, I thanked God that I had him, that he made it home, that he wasn't on that ship, that I never had to find out what funeral costs really were. And every once in a while I remembered that night. The call. The coldness. The silence. I let her sit in. Was it petty? Maybe. But was it deserved? Absolutely. Moral of the story. Sometimes petty revenge isn't loud. It's not fire and fury. It's silence. It's distance. It's letting someone sit alone in the void they created, and knowing they'll never be invited back into the light.